My name is Alyssa Grant. I'm 28 years old, United States Marine Corps, enlisted at 17, commissioned at 23. I've been stationed in Okinawa, Kandahar, and Fort Bragg, but none of that mattered the moment I stepped into that white hallway under the flickering lights of the security checkpoint at Langford Federal Complex. The corporal didn't look at my face when he said it. "You're not special, strip. Or turn around." My pulse spikes. There are 4 people behind me in line. 3 men, 1 woman, all in uniform. I feel their eyes like knives down my spine. The guard doesn't even bother with my ID badge. He stares at my chest, not with lust, worse with suspicion. Disdain. He's barely older than me, probably trained for 2 weeks and handed a clipboard and power he doesn't understand. But right now, he's the gatekeeper. And I'm the threat. My hands shake slightly, but I hide it as I start unfastening my outer coat. Inside, I'm screaming, "You know who I am. You just don't know what I carry. I've passed through this building 4 times before, never a problem. Today, something's different." His partner is watching a monitor closely, whispering in his ear. My record is clean. My purpose today is official. I'm cleared to brief the Logistics Oversight Committee. But that doesn't stop the humiliation from crawling under my skin as I peel away layer after layer of uniform under the cold stares of strangers. He points at my undershirt. That too. I pause just for a second. That's when I hear the muffled silence that comes when something in the room shifts. A door opens behind the glass wall to the right. Heavy boots on linoleum. Then the scuff of dress shoes. And suddenly, silence. A man in 4 stars stands behind the checkpoint glass. General Halston. He's legendary, the kind of man whose name you don't say casually. Bronze Star, 3 deployments, 2 tours at the Pentagon. The kind of man I was told never to speak to unless spoken to. He's staring at me like I'm a ghost. I pull off the undershirt, and the moment the black ink of my shoulder tattoo comes into view, his face drops. No one speaks. He takes 1 step forward, raises his hand, and salutes. The guard blinks confused. The others freeze. I don't move. The cold air hits my skin, and so does the weight of a memory I've never dared to speak aloud. That mark. It's the reason I've spent my whole life hiding in plain sight. I never meant for anyone to see it. Not because I was ashamed, but because I wasn't supposed to have it at all. The mark on my shoulder isn't in any military tattoo guide. No unit insignia, no deployment badge, no squad logo. It's an old angular symbol, just 2 slashed wings wrapping a vertical dagger. I'd only seen it once before. On the dog tag chain of my father the day he left for a mission he never returned from. He was declared missing in action when I was 9. No remains, no official file. Just a letter that said he served with honor. That symbol was on the envelope embossed faintly in wax, and never mentioned again. Until now. Until today. "You may pass," the general says quietly. The guard stutters, still trying to find words. But General Halston doesn't repeat himself. His eyes don't leave mine. They're not kind. They're not angry either. Just alert, calculating. Like he's trying to solve a puzzle that suddenly woke up and started walking. I pull my shirt back on and step through the scanner. My badge light's green. Behind me, the security officer gulps and doesn't say a word. As I walk down the corridor, every footstep echoes louder than the last. I'm not walking into a routine debriefing anymore. I'm walking into something I was never supposed to be part of. I feel the tattoo burning under my skin, not physically, but in my blood, like it knows it's been seen, like it recognizes the man who recognized it. 3 turns down the hall, I stop. The doors marked "Classified Authorized Personnel Only" stare back at me like cold steel eyes. My name's not on any list that opens them. But something tells me today those doors will open anyway. Because the moment that General saluted me, everything changed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible anymore. I used to think silence was just the absence of sound. But when your father disappears into classified airspace and your mother drinks her grief into nightly stupors, silence becomes something else. It becomes a weight, a second skin, a language that no one dares translate. I was 9 when my dad vanished. Major David Grant, USAF, was an Air Combat Command specialist. That's all they ever told us. No funeral, no body. Just the folded flag, the formal knock on the door, and a sealed letter in an envelope bearing a wax insignia that my mother never acknowledged, not once. She locked it in a fireproof box along with her voice. I'd sneak into that box when she was passed out, stare at the strange mark embossed in red wax, 2 wings and a vertical dagger. It didn't match anything I could find in books or online. Even as a child, I could tell this wasn't something you Googled. Mom used to be a sharp woman before Dad vanished. Afterward, she barely held it together. She taught me how to clean a rifle before I was 13, but couldn't remember my birthday by the time I turned 14. I learned to forge her signature to get through school. I joined ROTC to stay off the streets, then enlisted the second I turned 17. I didn't join to follow in my father's footsteps. I joined to chase the trail he left behind. There was no grave, no closure, just silence and the symbol I tattooed on my left shoulder blade the day I graduated from basic, not as some rebellious act, as a promise. My CO gave me hell for it. Regulations don't permit unrecognized marks above the elbow, but I lied, told them it was a family crest, some Scottish nonsense. It helped that I outscored every man in my class on marksmanship and endurance. My drill sergeant started calling me Cold Flame because I never yelled, never cracked, but burned through every obstacle. That nickname followed me through Okinawa, through Kandahar, even to Fort Bragg. But it never gave me what I wanted. No one knew the symbol. No one ever mentioned my father's name in the same breath as anything covert. On paper, his file ended the day his jet vanished from radar. Routine recon over disputed airspace, presumed KIA. But in my gut, I knew it was never routine. And the ink on my shoulder wasn't a family crest. It was a key. I just hadn't found the door. Until Langford. Langford isn't where secrets go to die, it's where they're born. Buried deep under the official title, Federal Logistics and Resource Management Division. It's a fortress of false labels. It's where materials are tracked, but also where things are erased. Things and people. I was sent there under a bland pretext contractor accountability review. I thought I'd be reviewing spreadsheets auditing shipment trails, but the presence of a 4-star general in the hallway, that was no coincidence. He saw the mark, and he recognized it. But he didn't ask questions. He saluted. I couldn't stop thinking about it, not during the debrief, not while pretending to care about fuel usage reports and surplus inventory. I kept replaying that moment in the checkpoint. His eyes, the recognition, the way he stood. He knew. At 1700 hours, I was scheduled to leave the building. But I didn't. Instead, I took a detour to the sub-level archives, pretending to have a misfiled document. I'd studied the floor plan days before arriving out of habit, knew which hallways were monitored and which were blind spots. I didn't break any rules, I just bent them until they forgot they were straight. That's how I found the room, buried at the far end of sub-level 3. No nameplate, just a steel door with a keypad, and just above the handle etched so faintly I thought I imagined it. The symbol. My pulse pounded. I reached to trace it with my finger, but before I made contact, a voice snapped behind me. "You're not cleared for this section, Captain Grant." I turned slowly. A woman in a navy blue uniform stood stiff-backed arms behind her, silver bar on her collar. Office of Special Investigations. No name tag. Her tone wasn't hostile. It was measured. "You're looking for answers," she said, stepping closer. "But you're not the only one carrying a ghost." Her eyes darted to my shoulder, even though it was fully covered. "You might want to go home and wait. You've already been seen. And now they're watching to see what you do next." Before I could ask who they were, she walked away. Just like that. And that's when it truly hit me. The security stop wasn't random. The inspection wasn't about protocol. It was a test, and I had just failed it, or passed it. I wasn't sure which yet. That night in the barracks, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the woman's voice, the door, the general's salute. Something had cracked open, something big, but there was no roadmap now, only shadows and symbols. I couldn't go back to pretending anymore. This was no longer about my father. It was about me. I reported for duty the next morning with a tighter bun, a sharper salute, and a lie building behind my smile. "Morning, Captain Grant." My supervisor, Lieutenant Monroe, nodded as I stepped into the ops center. His voice was casual. Too casual. He handed me a case file with a colored tab I'd never seen before. Purple. That wasn't standard. Inventory discrepancy in Hangar 6. "Special protocols apply," he said, not meeting my eyes. "You'll be escorted, for an inventory check." The air in the room shifted. I wasn't the only one who noticed it, but no one said anything. They just kept typing, eyes glued to their screens, lips pressed flat. 2 military police officers flanked me within minutes. No words exchanged, just a silent walk down a hall that felt longer than usual. We passed the steel door again. I didn't look, but I felt it, like gravity, like a knot pulling from the inside. They led me outside across the tarmac. It was overcast wind cutting sharp against my uniform. Hangar 6 loomed like a mouth half open waiting to swallow me. And then Strip said the one on the right, holding out a portable scanner. I blinked. "Excuse me. You'll need to remove your jacket and undershirt. High security clearance required. You've tripped a symbol alert." He said it so plainly, so coldly, like I was just another item on the checklist. I hesitated. Behind me, I sensed a small group gathering: civilian contractors, 2 logistics techs, and a base administrator, watching, judging. I removed my jacket slowly, then, with deliberate calm, my black undershirt. Gasps. Someone actually stepped backward, because there it was, the symbol. Inked into my shoulder blade in fine black lines, the dagger centered between 2 open wings. The same mark that had once been sealed on the envelope of my father's death certificate. "Is this some kind of joke?" one of the civilians whispered. "Who authorized that tattoo?" another barked. I didn't answer. I just stood still. Let them see it. Let them feel it. And then from behind the MPs, a firm voice cut through the wind. "At ease." The crowd parted and a man in 4-star regalia approached. Same man from the checkpoint, General Elias Carr. He didn't look at my face. He looked straight at the mark. And then, in front of everyone, officers, civilians, enlisted men, he saluted me. Not out of mockery, not out of irony, but with the precision of a man who knew what he was saluting. You could have heard a pin drop. Even the wind paused as if waiting to breathe again. He nodded once. "Welcome home, Shadow 7. Shadow 7. The name rang in my ears like a forgotten lullaby. I didn't know what it meant, but my spine went rigid. Every instinct screamed that something irreversible had just happened. The general turned and walked into the hangar without another word. The MPs stepped back. I followed him in half-dressed, half-mind racing. Inside, it was nothing like a standard aircraft hangar. No fighter jets, no equipment crates. Just a single chamber, low-lit, temperature-controlled, with walls lined in unmarked metal lockers and encrypted terminals. Carr was already waiting beside a table stacked with black folders and one sealed box. He motioned for me to sit. "Your father, David Grant, wasn't lost," he said flatly. "He was reassigned." I didn't speak. Operation Firelight, Shadow Unit, Ghost Warfare. Off the books. No trace. You wouldn't find it in any file system. My throat clenched. "And he's still alive." Carr's face didn't change. "That's classified." I stared at him. "Then why am I here?" He slid one of the black folders toward me. "Because you're next." The words weren't spoken, but I heard them all the same. Inside the folder was a photo-grainy night vision, a figure crouched behind enemy lines watching a convoy. He wore no rank, no name tag, but on his shoulder, the symbol, exactly like mine. My heart punched against my ribs. "That's him." Carr nodded once. "That photo is 3 months old." 3 months. My father had been alive all this time, hidden in the shadows, and I'd been chasing ghosts blindly, desperately, thinking I was the only one who cared. Carr continued, "We've been watching you, Captain. Since Kandahar. You have the same instincts, the same silence. That's not something you train. It's embedded." A bitter laugh clawed its way up my throat. So what? This was all a test. No, he said. It was a choice. You made it the moment you got that tattoo. He handed me the sealed box. Open it when you're alone. You'll know what to do. And with that, he left. No orders, no ceremony. Just me, a photo, and a box heavier than anything I'd carried in a combat zone. I didn't sleep that night. I waited until the barracks lights went out, then locked myself in the supply closet and opened the box. Inside, a combat patch, a USB drive, a handwritten letter. The letter was in my father's handwriting. It began with 3 words: I saw you. Continue, I saw you. 3 words. Written in my father's uneven scrawl, slanted sharp the way he used to sign school permission slips when he was rushing out the door in uniform. I sat on the floor of the supply closet, knees hugged to my chest, combat boots still laced light from my phone casting the faintest glow on the page. My fingertips trembled as I held the paper like it might dissolve if I exhaled too hard. The letter continued, You were 9. In the backyard. That was the day you caught the neighbor's boy stealing your bike. You didn't scream. You didn't run. You waited. You watched. Then you stepped in front of him and said, Are you really sure you want to do this? He handed it back and ran. That's when I knew. My throat closed. When they approached me about firelight, I said no the first time. But then I remembered that moment. Your face. Calm, fearless, already thinking 3 moves ahead. I knew what blood ran in your veins. I said yes the second time because I knew you'd grow up into someone I could trust with what came after me. I blinked hard, but the tears wouldn't stay put. They traced slow, hot lines down my cheeks and pooled under my jaw. If you're reading this, it means they found you. It means you're ready. But it also means I'm running out of time. I pressed the paper flat on my knee and took out the USB drive, plugged it into my encrypted tablet. A black screen loaded with only 1 line of text, Project Shadow Legacy. Access level granted. It opened a secure archive video logs mission files, unredacted surveillance footage from theaters I wasn't supposed to know existed. And then, audio. My father's voice. This is Operative Grant. Date November 3rd, 2019. Update on Operation Widow's Bridge. We've intercepted encrypted chatter confirming the resurgence of the Orion Rogue Cell. Suggest shadow asset redeployment. Orion Rogue Cell. Even in my years of classified work, that name had only been spoken in whispers, like a rumor inside a ghost story. The files painted a picture I wasn't prepared for: global destabilization efforts, deep embedded agents, political manipulation forces operating in the background of the world I thought I understood, and my father had been fighting them. Alone. I shut off the screen and sat in the dark, the truth rearranging everything I believed about my childhood, his disappearance, my career. None of this was accidental. I hadn't made it through hard work alone. I had been chosen. No, not chosen. Prepared. The next morning, I reported for duty like nothing had changed. But everything had. The base was quiet. Too quiet. Then Lieutenant Monroe found me in the mess hall and handed me a new order slip unsigned. Unsealed. No rank, no heading. Just a grid coordinate and a time. He didn't look me in the eyes. Good luck, Captain. I didn't ask questions. I packed light. 1 rucksack, my service pistol, and the patch from the box, black background, the winged dagger stitched in silver thread. No division insignia, no country, just the symbol. At exactly 0400 hours, a nondescript SUV pulled up outside the admin building. Civilian plates, tinted windows. The driver didn't speak. We drove for hours, past the base perimeter, past any town I recognized, into the wild spaces of Arizona that civilians never think about, flatlands that stretch into silence, places without names. We finally pulled into an abandoned airstrip. A hangar, rusting and half-sunken, stood at the edge of the gravel. Inside, 5 people. All standing, all wearing the same patch I'd just packed. 1 woman, tall black, shaved head, eyes sharp as razors, stepped forward. You're late. I said nothing. She tossed me a sealed folder. Read it. Memorize it. Burn it. You get 1 question. I opened the file. 1 page. Mission brief. Names, coordinates, satellite image of a compound in northern Ukraine, and a photo of the man I hadn't seen in over 20 years. My father. Only this time, he was behind bars. My voice came out before I could stop it. He's been captured. No, the woman said evenly. He surrendered. My blood ran cold. Why would he? That was your one question. The team turned as one and began prepping gear. Silencers, smoke packs, portable jammers. No one needed directions. This wasn't training. I folded the paper and lit it with a match from my survival kit. Watched it curl into ash black, flaking into nothing. So that was it. No medals, no flag, no formal clearance. Just a nameless team, a father behind bars, a legacy handed down in ink and secrets. But one thing rang louder than the silence around us. I wasn't here to follow orders. I was here to finish what he started, and I would, no matter what. We didn't fly commercial. We didn't fly military either. The transport was unmarked charcoal gray, whisper silent even on the tarmac. The inside was stripped bare except for 6 fold-down seats, rations, encrypted comms gear, and a sealed steel locker with no labels. No one spoke. I sat across from the woman who'd handed me the mission file. Her name, I'd learned, was Reeve. No rank, no call sign. Just Reeve. Her eyes scanned a tablet in rhythmic blinks like each data point etched itself behind her retinas. The others moved with the kind of precision you can't train for in boot camp. This wasn't a unit of misfits or elites. These were ghosts, soldiers who'd been erased on paper but sharpened in fire. And now I was one of them. As the hours passed, I reviewed every image, every note from my father's file, though it had already burned. The words lived clear in my mind. Project Shadow Legacy. His voice. This is where we decide the world that comes next. That phrase hit differently now, because it wasn't just about him. It was about me, about whether I was ready to become what he believed I already was. The mission was coded Compound Echo 6, no formal rescue, no reinforcements. Our job was not to storm in with flags and orders, it was to extract a target buried behind 5 layers of international deniability in a part of the world no official map would claim. That target, my father. That twist still echoed inside me like a broken bone healing wrong. He surrendered, Reeve had said. That single phrase didn't add up. My father would never hand himself over, not unless he was bait, or worse, unless it was part of something deeper. Midway through the flight, Reeve passed me a dossier, thick with handwritten annotations and margin notes. I opened to the first page. It wasn't about my father. It was about me. Photos, reports, evaluations going back to my time in JROTC, then advanced placement in psychological screening. 2 flagged instances of behavior indicative of pattern-level threat anticipation. One instructor had written displays eerie ability to analyze chaotic environments and make decisions independent of peer influence. Lacks traditional fear response. I felt something twist in my stomach. They'd been watching me all along. Reeve watched me read her expression unreadable. You were part of the contingency. For what? For when your father went dark. You're not a replacement. You're the second half of the plan. I stared at the next document, my father's field notes, handwritten schematics of the Orion Network's inner circle, connections in defense contractors, political financiers, even journalists, all off the books, all compiled by him and stashed under deep code encryption. Why didn't he tell me Reeve didn't blink? He did. You just weren't ready to understand it. The flight touched down in silence. Northern Ukraine, outskirts of an abandoned Soviet mining town. Snow like powdered chalk drifted over dead brush and collapsed outposts. In the distance, a compound buried into a ridge, gray walls, barbed fencing, and no visible guards. We split into teams of 2. My partner, a quiet sniper named Lang, tapped his earpiece. Calm blackout begins in 90 seconds. Once we breach no way to call for extraction. We get 'em. Or we vanish too. We moved. I remember the precision. The way the wind cut under my collar. The way my boots sank just slightly into frost-hardened dirt. We reached the rear access corridor, what should have been a drainage tunnel now retrofitted with biometric gates. Lang ran the hack node. I listened. There's something surreal about approaching the room where your father is being held. It's like watching your childhood walk toward you in reverse. We reached a reinforced cell. Inside him, older, thinner, but unmistakably him. He looked up and I swear for a moment he smiled. "Rachel," he said, "you're early." Tears blurred my vision, but my voice stayed steady. "You're welcome." He stood slowly, pain etched into every joint. His wrists were chained, but there was no blood, no bruises. He hadn't been tortured. He'd been waiting. Lang covered us while I knelt to unclip the manacles. "Why?" I whispered. "Why surrender?" He looked at me calm as ever, because sometimes the only way to kill the spider is from inside the web. I froze. "Dad!" He reached into the lining of his coat and pulled out a small sealed drive. "This holds every node, every sleeper, every finance link, but I couldn't transmit it without blowing the last tracker. I needed someone who could walk in untouched. I realized then I hadn't come to save him. I'd come to activate the final phase." He pressed the drive into my palm. "You're the next shadow. Finish it." I nodded, and we ran. But as we exited through the dark halls of Echo 6, alarms began to whine. They knew we were inside. Lang shouted, "Secondary breach East Corridor." We moved fast, too fast to think, but I wasn't afraid, because for the first time I wasn't reacting. I was leading, just like he said I would. We exploded into the tree line with spotlights carving through the night behind us. Lang's rifle barked short bursts controlled. "Keep moving." My father, weak but determined, kept pace. Blood darkened his pant leg. He'd taken a hit during the breach, but refused to slow. I gripped the data drive in my hand so tightly my knuckles whitened. The cold air sliced my lungs, but I didn't stop. Couldn't. We had 20 minutes to reach the exfil site. Then the window closed. After that, no more safe channels, no more backup, just us and a storm of consequences. Behind us, the Echo 6 compound erupted with floodlights and sirens. That abandoned Facility A front for something far deeper. The Orion network wasn't just real, it had teeth. And they were hunting us now. Lang dropped 2 more pursuers, then cursed. "Chopper incoming, not ours." I glanced up rotor blades, slicing the sky, a dark shadow hovering just over the ridge. "They're cutting us off," I said. "Not if we hit the gorge," Lang replied. I knew the path. Reeve had briefed it, a narrow cliff run leading to a sheer drop where our real transport waited if we could transmit the beacon from the other side. We veered. The ground grew uneven. I grabbed my father's arm, nearly lifting him with my stride. His breath came in short, ragged gasps, but his grip on my shoulder was iron. "I didn't think they'd send you," he said between breaths. "They didn't," I told him. "I sent myself." That made him laugh short and proud. Bullets chewed into bark near my head. Lang shouted Sniper Northwest Ridge. We hit the ground. I pulled the beacon transmitter from my vest and flicked the seal ready to go once we reached the summit. Lang returned fire, then fell into position behind us. My mind raced. Not just tactics, not just escape. Strategy, legacy, purpose. I wasn't just my father's daughter anymore. I was the continuation of his mission. And in that moment, I realized something vital. The mark on my shoulder tattooed there by his hand years ago in a remote cabin I thought was just a hunting lodge. It wasn't symbolic. It was functional. I reached under my sleeve and peeled back the micro-thin layer of protective film. Embedded beneath the skin was a nano-reactive identifier stealth-coded to unlock a final channel. A failsafe. Lang saw it. "You're the trigger." "Yeah," I whispered. "Looks like I always was." We crested the cliff. Below us, the gorge opened wide, silent, sheer, and unforgiving. Across the gap, a narrow rope bridge swayed ancient and half-frozen. Beyond that, a clearing where a blacked-out VTOL hummed cloaked under thermal masking netting. Lang covered our backs. "Go, I'll hold the ridge." My father shook his head. "We don't leave anyone." Lang snapped. "With respect, sir, shut up and move." We ran. The bridge creaked with every step. Wind howled through the chasm. Halfway across, the wood cracked. I shoved my father forward as a round tore through the planks near my feet. I didn't look back. Reaching the far edge, I slid the beacon into place and punched the activation code. The transmitter blinked 3 times. Then everything changed. Above us, the VTOL roared to life, and from the tree line behind, just as Lang began to retreat, another sound grew louder, a second aircraft. Larger, heavier. Enemy! Lang, I screamed. He turned toward us, face cold with resolve. Get your dad out. Then the shot came. One sharp sound, and he dropped. Gone. I wanted to scream, but there was no time. The Orion bird descended, fast troops on rappel weapons drawn. I fired blindly, covering our sprint to the ramp of the friendly VTOL. Hands grabbed us, pulled us in. My father collapsed onto the deck as the rear hatch slammed shut. Then lift off. We rose above the tree line as Orion's fire raked the hillside below. I watched their faces disappear in the smoke, then vanish entirely. We'd made it, but at a cost. Back at the facility days later, I sat in Reeves' office silent. My arm was bandaged where the tattoo had been. The drive was decrypted, the data exposed. The Orion network had suffered its first true breach in decades, but none of it felt like victory. They'll scatter now, Reeves said, watching a digital map pulse with nodes. Hide, regroup. This was never about one operation. This was a war of shadows. I didn't respond. My father was alive, recovering, but changed, and Lang. He was a name that would never appear in any medal ceremony. No folded flag, no funeral. Reeves slid a folder toward me. New orders. Time to finish what he started, she said. I opened the file. My face stared back at me next to a new title. Shadow Unit Lead Pierce Rachel. I looked up at her. You're promoting me. She didn't blink. You promoted yourself the second you crossed that bridge. I nodded slowly. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding behind someone else's mission. I was the mission, and I wasn't done yet. It's been 8 months since the operation in the gorge. 8 months since Lang took that bullet so we could get out. 8 months since my father whispered, barely conscious, "Don't let it happen again." I haven't. I lead now, not just in name, but in purpose. Shadow Unit isn't just a ghost story anymore. We're real. We're strategic. We move quietly, strike surgically, and disappear without a sound. And for the first time since my enlistment, I feel like every day means something. We've dismantled 3 Orion satellite nodes in Europe, intercepted an assassination attempt on a U.S. liaison in Nairobi, extracted a compromised whistleblower from within their own intelligence network. Each mission calculated, precise, anonymous. We never wear insignia, never salute, no dress blues, no parades. But the new recruits know what they saw when they were chosen, what they saw on me the day I walked into the debrief room and rolled up my sleeve. The mark. It's not just a symbol now, it's an invitation. It says, you've been overlooked, underestimated, or erased. But you were never weak, just waiting. And when they ask me about Lang, because the rookies always do, I don't give them a speech. I give them his name, his rank, and his last words. Get your dad out. That was his mission. Mine is still going. But I'm not cold about it anymore. I've changed. I visit my father weekly. He walks with a cane now, but he's sharper than I've ever seen him. He's even started teaching again off the record, of course. We talk in code. But beneath every line is one thing neither of us say aloud, that we were both betrayed. And both saved. I should have told you everything earlier. He admitted one morning on the porch, the scent of old pine thick in the air. But part of me didn't believe I deserved your help. You didn't, I said. You deserved my respect. And you had that. Even when I hated you. He nodded. Didn't flinch. That's growth for both of us. He gave me the name of one last Orion mole, buried deep in an advisory role within a federal contractor. I got him out quietly. No gunfire, no blood. Just a flash drive, a hard decision, and a canceled contract worth $42 million. That's the kind of victory I like now. We don't get statues. We don't get stories. We get justice. And sometimes, healing. 3 weeks ago, I was called to DC briefing with the Joint Special Access Oversight Committee. The general, sitting at the far end of the table, asked me to remove my jacket for identity confirmation. Standard protocol, he claimed. I raised an eyebrow but complied. Quiet room, no cameras. I rolled down my shoulder and exposed the mark. The general stood up and saluted. "Shadow unit is operational," he said, voice even. "We were told you were myth. We're glad you're not." I didn't say anything, just pulled the sleeve back up, nodded, and walked out. I had a plane to catch. If you're wondering what happens to someone like me after everything, after boot camp humiliation, after betrayal, after surviving a war no one knows exists, after watching a man die for you, after earning the trust of a father who once hid in shadows while you were being torn apart, the answer is you don't go back to normal. You build something better. You build a new self, not the one they saw in the security line when they barked, "Strip down." What are you hiding? Not the woman they laughed at in basic training. Not even the agent your own unit forgot. You build the version they can't control anymore. I don't wear medals, but I do wear scars. And if you look closely enough, the mark isn't just a tattoo. It's made from every insult, every failure, every ounce of shame I once swallowed. It's my origin. And the truth, I don't want them to be afraid of it. I want them to know I earned it. The next time someone like me walks into a room, quiet, underestimated, dismissed, and someone sneers, "Who the hell do you think you are?" I hope the answer is already there in their mind. She's the one they tried to break, and failed.